Al jaren worstelt Europa met de grootste vluchtelingencrisis sinds de Tweede Wereldoorlog. Honderdduizenden mensen riskeren hun leven op zee. Grenzen staan onder druk. Het asieldebat raakt gepolariseerd. En dan spoelt begin september 2015 een 3-jarig Syrisch jongetje aan. Hij wordt het symbool van de crisis.
De hele wereld praat sinds gisteravond over een foto.
It's hard to watch, but it should be seen.
Een symbool dat steeds terugkeert.
It's the predictable result of this administration's policies of leading from behind.
Dat een verschrikkelijk beeld is. Je krijgt er koude rillingen van. Iedereen, ik ook. Maar ik zeg wel dat het gevolg is van de open deurenbeleid van Europa.
Met die foto is Aylan Kurdi binnen 1 dag van iedereen. Maar er is ook een vader die zijn zoon verliest. Medialogica. Over hoe een foto de publieke opinie in zijn greep houdt.
Evet, Aylan Kurdi'nin cesedi tam burada yatıyordu. Tekneden dalgalarla sürüklenerek buraya taşınmıştı. Tam yan pozisyonda duruyordu. İşte daha sonra buradaki sahil güvenlik ekipleri ve jandarma ekiplerinin vatandaşlarını ihbar etmesi üzerine bölgeye geliyorlar. Burada ilk olarak bölgede çevre güvenliği alınıyor. Biz burada o olay olmadan önce 15 gün, 20 gün kadar nöbet tuttuk. Yani bu sahilde neredeyse hani evimden çok bu sahilde yaşadım diyebilirim. Aracımda yattım. Arkadaşlarımızla burada nöbet tuttuk. Çünkü bu olayların yaşanacağını tahmin ediyorduk. Her gün çıkışlar oluyor. Yani sahil güvenlik o kadar önlem almasına rağmen son günlerde artık yorulmuştuk. Yani gelmek istemiyorduk bölgeye. Hani aynı şeyleri çekeceğimizi tahmin edip. Zaten bu sahile 250-300 metre mesafedeydim. Tabii böyle bir dünya çapında ses getirecek bir olayın olduğunu bilseydim buraya gelirdim önce ama bana gelen telefon buraya 500 metre geride bir bölgede cesetler olduğu ve arama yapıldığı yönündeydi. Ben oraya gitmeyi tercih ettim çünkü çok fazla ceset olduğu için habercilik refleksiyle. Tabii bu gazeteciliğin şansı diyoruz biz buna. Yani bütün gazeteciler gibi, foto muhabirleri gibi ben de onu görüntülemek isterdim ama bu şans işi, kesinlikle şans.
De journalist die de foto's wel maakt is Nilüfer Demir. Demir werkt voor DHA, een van de grootste persbureaus van Turkije. Omdat zij ziek is, spreken we met haar directeur, die op 2 september 2015 besluit om de foto's ongecensureerd te verspreiden.
İşte o günlerden birinde, yani o sıcak günlerden birinde Aylan Kurdi'nin fotoğrafı önüme düştü. O sahilde masum bir çocuk. Hiç ölmemiş gibiydi, uyuyor gibiydi. Üzerindeki kırmızı onu hala hayata bağlayan bir renkti. Arkasındaki deniz sakinleşmişti. Fotoğrafa uzun uzun baktım. Acaba bunun neresini kapatmalıyız? Yani nasıl kapatarak yayın yapmalıyız? Bence olduğu gibi vermek ve bunu diğer yayın kuruluşlarının rejilerine, yazı işleri odalarına bırakmak gerekir diye düşündüm. Ama yine de bir dipnot koyduk. O bir bebek, o bir çocuk, masum ve ondan izin alma şansımız hiç yok.
Het persbureau plaatst de foto's op zijn website. Via sociale media in Turkije en het Midden-Oosten bereiken ze Peter Boekaert, directeur bij Human Rights Watch.
The picture came on my mobile phone. I was probably one of the first people to see it on social media, and it just struck me right in my stomach. I think what makes it so powerful is you don't actually see his face, but you see his shoes, the kind of sneakers that we put on our children every morning. And that's really what caught my eye the first, is the shoes. And I realized that his parents had lovingly dressed him that morning, preparing themselves for this very dangerous journey.
Farida Vis, directeur van het Visual Social Media Lab aan de Universiteit van Sheffield, onderzoekt hoe de foto binnen enkele uren viral gaat.
In the first 2 hours, you get journalists, international journalists sharing it. And then within that same 2 hours, you get the emergency director of Human Rights Watch, Peter Bouckaert, sharing it from Switzerland. So you get this kind of like chain reaction in the first 2 hours of different important people sharing it. If we go to the first 3 hours, Peter Bouckaert is down here. But the really important person is Liz Sly at the Washington Post, who is the bureau chief in Beirut. This gets shared, so all of these little other dots are individual Twitter users sharing her tweet more than 7,000 times. And this is the moment that it really goes viral on Twitter. However, Peter Bouckaert is earlier and plays the key role in the spread into Europe.
I very rarely use graphic images in my work, but in the case of the picture of Aylan Kurdi, it was important to shock the world because shocking things are happening in the Mediterranean and people needed that wake-up call.
1 dag later staat het beeld van Aylan Kurdi op voorpagina's overal ter wereld.
I've seen the impact from the decision-making of the politicians at the highest level who felt personally affected by the picture to the volunteers on the beaches in Greece. I mean, so many volunteers told me that after seeing that picture, they decided to come and try to help to stop the drownings.
Het beeld brengt wereldwijd mensen in beweging. Zoals tijdens deze actie op het strand van Marokko. Bij een protestbijeenkomst in Australië. En in Nederland, waar geschokte burgers spullen naar verzamelpunten brengen.
Het publiek wil helpen, zamelt kleding in, schoenen, toiletartikelen. In de Amerika-hal in Apeldoorn, waar 400 vluchtelingen zijn ondergebracht, weten ze niet meer waar ze het moeten laten.
Aylan bebek fotoğrafı suratımıza bir tokat gibi indi. Ve bir sürü görüntüden çok daha etkili oldu. 20 karede olsa sadece tek bir karesiyle Aylan bebek görevini yaptı. WordPress'e mi girer, polislerimi alır. Alırsa memnun oluruz, mutlu oluruz. Girerse seviniriz. Ama bu kadar yani.
Welcome everybody for this very important task ahead. Judging World Press Photo in 2016.
Het kantoor van World Press Photo in Amsterdam. De plek waar uit ruim 80.000 foto's de nieuwsfoto van 2015 wordt gekozen.
Frances Cohn is this year the chair of the jury. The rooms that you judge in, they will be cold. But but you'll have blankets. You'll have blankets and you have anything because...
Keep your mind clear. The refugees, that's one of the main story in 2015. So it's a lot of compelling stories on the migrants throughout, from the Middle East, the borders, arriving on the island, crossing Europe. We have a lot.
And I think part of the reason for that is that, this sort of scale of human emotion is so present and so available to see that it resonates with people. There was a tremendous amount of redundancy in the images. You'd see photographs in just literally from 1, 2, 3, 4 angle because you could see that they were standing next to each other. I just don't know how many photographers, but dozens and dozens and dozens. There's so much of the same, right? How do you differentiate? How do you identify what's going to matter? What's going to resonate? What's going to sort of push people to care?
Oneindig veel foto's van vluchtelingen, waarvan enkele op de voorpagina's belanden. Het is vooral de schokkende foto van Aylan Kurdi, een doodaangespoeld kind, die tot discussies in de redactieruimtes leidt.
At the moment those pictures were shown, the room of very experienced news editors really did fall silent. The difficulty is that, while it's really, really important to, highlight the severity of the situation and the gravity of the story, you also don't want to repel your readers and turn them away from the heart of the matter.
In Nederland is Trouw de enige landelijke krant die een foto van Aylan op de voorpagina plaatst. De foto van het jongetje alleen. Daarnaast een begeleidende tekst.
Wij zijn heel terughoudend in het laten zien van lijken sowieso in de krant. En zeker op de voorpagina. Dus dat is wel een uitzondering wat we nu gedaan hebben. Dit beeld was dus nog niet vertoond. Van iemand die eigenlijk ook zo gaaf en zo... ja, eigenlijk heel menselijk daar ligt.
Deze beelden waren nog niet eerder geweest. Het was altijd, waren de mensen te ver in de staat van ontbinding, die laat je niet zien. En waarschijnlijk, dit was een van de eerste foto's waar een fotograaf er blijkbaar net bij was. Dat je op dat snijvlak zit van, ligt hij te slapen of is hij dood? En dat is waarom we kunnen deze foto wel laten zien.
We felt that the tender nature of the police officer lifting the child's body and cradling it in his arms, it was, much more of a sort of human moment, and therefore it slightly softened the blow. The other picture was felt to be just kind of so desolate.
Dan zou deze foto een alternatief geweest kunnen zijn. Maar hier vonden we eigenlijk dat de aandacht alweer te veel van het jongetje werd afgeleid.
Aidan White is oud-journalist en directeur van the Ethical Journalism Network. Een organisatie die de ethiek van de journalistiek bestudeert.
If you look at that picture, there are 3 images that were used around the world. But all 3 pictures can be used in different ways. If you want to tell a story which is basically showing that there is an inhumane response from authorities, a disregard for the tragedy of migration, then there was a picture of his body, and then a few feet away, a Coast Guard official writing in a book. If you want to focus just on, very often, and some did, a sentimental attachment to the victim, then you have the picture of the boy himself. But if you want to show a picture which actually demonstrates humanity and human solidarity in the way that the body of this dead child was being taken away, then the third picture told a different story. Each of those could be used to tell a different narrative, and each of them were. So it's quite interesting. And what that reveals is that although the pictures are dramatic and important, in the end, it's the context in which the pictures are used by journalists.
Today we will start with the 3rd round judging. Hopefully we'll also be able to move to the 4th round. We have another system than what you're used to. We work with anonymous voting, so you're pressing the little click to be vote.
And I'm seeing the votes come in here.
Exactly.
You need one more?
No, that's it.
You have a reset now?
Just reset there.
And if you want to restore it, it's this one.
Anybody can take a photo of anything. It has to have a point of view. There is someone behind that camera that connect to what they are showing us, what they are witnessing. It has to bring me some kind of emotion.
Maar niet alle nieuwsgebeurtenissen leveren aansprekende foto's op. Een aantal dagen voor de foto's van Aylan zijn genomen, vindt er een ongeluk met bootvluchtelingen voor de Libische kust plaats. Ook dan zijn er foto's van verdronken kinderen.
Dit zou je niet plaatsen in Trouw?
Nee.
Waarom niet?
Dit is te confronterend. Dit is te gruwelijk. Hier zie je echt gewoon, laat ik maar zeggen, lijken in staat van ontbinding. En dat wilden de meeste mensen toch niet direct zien.
Journalism is about giving information. It's about presenting the information in a way which is stylish and accessible. We need aesthetic in pictures as much as we need good language in use of words. We need phrases which sing to people, which communicate easily and simply difficult ideas, complex ideas. We need pictures to do the same. So of course we need aesthetic. Of course we need elements in a picture or in a video, which will reach out to people and will communicate quickly and simply the story behind them.
Bij sommige nieuwsgebeurtenissen is het moeilijk om met beelden het verhaal te vertellen. Op 27 augustus 2015 stikken in Oostenrijk meer dan 70 vluchtelingen in een vrachtwagen. De pers kan geen foto's maken van de slachtoffers.
There are many victims. And when we're telling our stories, very often we don't focus enough on the victims. But actually there's a horrible reality about it. We can't. You can't tell the story of every victim. You can't take pictures of everyone who is a victim.
It is quite difficult for us to tell the story visually. And so, we were in a situation where we just had to use the pictures of the forensic people working around the van. But, nevertheless, in this particular occasion, the words had to do the talking. And it was a really horrific tale.
But you can use iconic, symbolic images to tell their story and to be able to articulate what is going on. And in that sense, the Aylan Kurdi picture and the sympathy that flowed from it spoke also for the victims in the van who were not photographed, spoke also for all of the victims who remain unnamed and unknown, and the thousands of victims that there have been, because it allowed for a public expression of support and solidarity.
Het beeld als symbool, waarbij het slachtoffer op de foto voor andere slachtoffers staat. Dat was ook het geval bij deze foto uit 1972, gemaakt door Nick Ut tijdens een napalmaanval op een Vietnamees dorp. Of deze foto die Kevin Carter in 1993 van de hongersnood in Soedan maakte.
In terms of a kind of a cultural reservoir, if you like, the image of Aylan on his own is a image of, kind of historical Christian iconography, historical significance. We recognize that as an image of suffering. And I think the image where he's picked up is also has those resonances. It's the image of the Pietà. It's the image of, Jesus being kind of cradled. It's the image of, a helper picking up a dead or a wounded child. And we've seen these images over and over in the press.
Okay, so let's just stick with this. Have you got a viewer?
In 1989 maakt Stuart Franklin een iconische foto van de zogenoemde Tank Man op het plein van de Hemelse Vrede in Beijing.
So what is an icon? Often the images that have been described as iconic have been part of a political story. I think it's a very problematic term, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I think it's a term that has been used as a tool by the media and by politicians in order to give weight to particular pictures for particular reasons.
Naar aanleiding van de foto's van Aylan organiseert de krant The Independent een petitie om meer Syrische vluchtelingen tot Engeland toe te laten. In 2 dagen zijn er bijna 200.000 ondertekenaars. En dat heeft effect.
Today I can announce that we will do more, providing resettlement for thousands more Syrian refugees.
I don't think there is a case in British history where government policy has been changed overnight on the basis of one photograph, and that certainly happened over that early September the 2nd or 3rd. David Cameron literally changed government policy overnight.
Ook in andere landen maken politici gebruik van het beeld van Aylan.
In der vergangenen Woche ist das Bild des toten Aylan Kurdi um die Welt gegangen.
Dat beeld vertelt ons een ongelooflijk gruwelijke waarheid.
That wee boy has touched our hearts, but his is not an isolated tragedy.
It's the predictable result of this administration's policies of leading from behind.
And what Merkel has done this week, which has compounded it by a factor of 3 or 4, means that actually, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's true, we will see more photographs.
The Tank Man picture was obviously used as a political football, just in the same way, I think, as the Aylan Kurdi picture has, in completely different circumstances. George Bush, well, senior as it was, the Chinese government were keen to tell of the photographers, look how the Chinese showed restraint. They didn't run him over, they didn't shoot him, he crossed the road. And that enabled, Bush to continue sort of business as usual. And then you've got the other way in which the Tiananmen Square picture became sort of important. It was on, many student walls all over Europe, all over Hong Kong, all over the world, was this idea of freedom in the sense of freedom to express yourself.
Everybody fights over iconic images. And in the end, they perhaps just lose their original meaning. It's the same with people running around with Che Guevara T-shirts as a symbol rather than understanding who Che Guevara was. But, there's a story behind these pictures and a tragedy behind these pictures.
Over het verhaal achter de foto wordt vanaf het begin gespeculeerd. Bijvoorbeeld over de rol van de vader, Abdullah Kurdi, die als enig familielid de fatale boottocht overleeft. En er zijn meer speculaties.
The money for that boy's father to pay the people smugglers was sent from Canada. And the father sent them on that boat so the father could get dental treatment.
What happened with the refugee crisis is that everybody saw a photo. They were very upset by that staged photo, and they wanted to do something about it to make themselves feel better.
I think what you see with this image is, of course, not everybody's going to agree on what you think you're looking at. And images have always had that possibility, that different people come with different interpretations. So an image can also become a battleground, where people may say, this is not what you think you're looking at.
Komplo teorileri her zaman çok başarılı bir fotoğraf ya da dünyayı sarsan olaylarda her zaman arkasından böyle şeyler çıkar. O şartlar, orada gördüğümüz şartlar, o fotoğraf neyse odur. Yani dalgalar nasıl itmişse öyledir. Kumlar geriye çekilirken nasıl çekilmişse öyledir. Aylan bebeğin pozisyonuna bizim elimizi sürme, değiştirme, yönlendirme gibi bir hakkımız yok. Bunu bilimle çalışan hiç kimse bugüne kadar yapmadı.
De Canadese journalist Adnan Khan staat regelmatig in contact met de vader, Abdullah Kurdi.
The father became kind of, I would say, a victim of the symbol, He was sort of, here's a guy whose only claim to fame is a picture of his dead son. And I think early on, people were quite sympathetic towards him. But there was a moment where some information, there was an interview given by some Iraqi refugees who were on that boat, and they claimed that Abdullah was actually a smuggler and was actually driving the boat and these sorts of, and that entirely seemed to switch the story. It seemed to take a complete 180, and then the focus was on Abdullah the smuggler.
Shows very little understanding of the actual reality, because that's what's happening every day. These people are being pushed onto these boats and told to drive them for themselves. There is no smuggler on the boat. It's just a bunch of desperate people trying to get across this sea without any experience driving a boat.
There was always a refugee working with the smugglers to recruit other people for the boat, and sometimes they would get a discount on the ticket, right? So, of course, this is sort of my own speculation, but it seems to me that the only possibility is that he played that role for the smugglers.
It's about a tapestry that's being created. It begins with a central image of Aylan Kurdi, but the surrounding area has to be fitted in as well. The role of his father, the role of his family, why they were there, where they had come from, where they were intending to go. All of that needs to be put in place as well, so that at some point, and maybe it's not even now, at some point in the future, we will have the full story of Aylan Kurdi and the tragic route that he took to that Turkish beach.
Een deel van de feiten is onbekend. En om het nog complexer te maken, zijn er partijen die de vader van Aylan tot martelaar van hun strijd willen uitroepen.
Within days, he was receiving calls from world leaders offering sympathy. And I mean, it was one of the things he told me when I met him was, I got calls from people speaking languages I don't even understand.
Abdullah Kurdi, this is someone who then ends up being a kind of a political pawn in this larger geopolitical tug of war, if you like.
Erdogan, the current president of Turkey, offered citizenship to Abdullah. Come to Turkey, and you're one of us. You're our brother. You're one of us. Whereas the leadership in Iraqi Kurdistan said, no, come to us. Come. You're one of our brothers. You're our Kurdish brother, and sort of wanted to use Abdullah for entirely different purposes to sort of highlight the Kurdish cause and highlight the history of tragedy for the Kurds, etc.
Abdullah Kurdi staat continu in de aandacht. Dat is ook het geval tijdens deze ceremonie in Iraaks Koerdistan.
Abdullah Kurdi was invited to accept an honorary award, and the event was very much organized to basically highlight the tragedy and the need to support the victims and to try and do something for Kurdish minority. But enters into a hall and sits on stage and is faced with pillars showing his dead son.
You could see the look on his face, just completely. He walks in with confidence, and he knows he's going to be in front of the cameras, etc., etc. He could put on that face, but then the picture, as soon as he saw that first poster, you could see him just sort of melt. It seemed to me that the picture itself had lost all sense of humanness, and it just had become this kind of abstract thing that can be used.
In de maanden na de publicatie van de foto's van Aylan bepalen andere gebeurtenissen het nieuws. Nieuwe beelden komen op ons netvlies. Zoals die van de aanslagen in Parijs in november 2015. En de aanrandingen op het stationsplein van Keulen tijdens de jaarwisseling.
Charlie Hebdo uses the image and basically says, if Alan had grown up, he would basically, start harassing people in the street. He would be like a kind of sexual molester. So a very, very different way of using the image.
It is a kind of hijacking. There's a violence to it, I think, right? I think it's not as simple as just sort of walking into a shop and picking up something and walking out, or it's, I think there's a level of violence involved in taking that image and saying, now that's mine, I don't care what Abdullah thinks, I don't care what the family thinks, this image is now, and I'm going to do what I want with it.
Yes, people do hijack images for their own purposes, in the same way that they hijack quotes. They hijack quotes from literature. Everybody hijacks stuff in order to build an argument of one sort or another. I mean, that's the nature of discourse.
What we have to ask, and what we hope, is that we in journalism know what we're supposed to do. We work in a framework of values, and our values tell us we have to be humane, we have to avoid hostility, we have to avoid incitement, and we have to avoid humiliating people or making a situation worse. We can't force those values on others, but we can promote good communications in the public sphere, which shows respect.
Biz sadece yayıncı olarak görevimizi yaptık ve fotoğrafı bütün dünyaya verdik. Geri kalan kısmı dünyanın kendi değişik bölgelerindeki insanların ahlaklarıyla, davranışlarıyla, vicdanlarıyla, yürekleriyle hesaplaştıkları veya hesaplaşmaları gereken bir davranıştır. Davranış bozukluğu gösterenlere tabii ki söylenecek hiçbir şey yok.
Amsterdam, 18 februari 2016. World Press Photo maakt de winnaar bekend.
I think we were all aware of that photo, but that did not play really a major role. It's not because a photo had really a lot of recognition at the time that it gives a special status.
Ça va? Très bien, et toi? Oui.
Ready?
I hope so. Yeah, I think so.
He made a photograph of refugees crossing the border from Serbia to Hungary, taken at night on August 28th in 2015. Very proud to have here the winner of 2015 World Press Photo Award, Warren Richardson of Australia. Warren.
De jury kiest de foto mede vanwege de eenvoud en de symboliek van het prikkeldraad. Een beeld dat nooit eerder gepubliceerd is of viral is gegaan. Na de uitreiking is er wel wereldwijd aandacht voor deze foto. En ditmaal voor het beeld van een kind dat wel de tocht naar Europa overleeft. Een beeld dat hoop uitstraalt. In een crisis waar iedere dag nog doden vallen.
Every day there's 2 Aylan Kurdi's drowning on average in the Mediterranean. And I think that's the real tragedy. When the image of Aylan Kurdi's body was disseminated, so many people around the world said, this needs to stop. I'm going to do something. I'm committing myself that this shouldn't happen anymore. From political leaders to very simple young volunteers. We made that personal commitment that we didn't want to see this happen again. Yet, all of these months later, more people are drowning in the Mediterranean than ever.
Bodrum, een half jaar later. 4 maanden na Parijs, 2 maanden na Keulen. Op het strand herinnert niets meer aan het drama dat zich hier afspeelde.
I wouldn't call it a game changer actually for anyone in the end. It I think caused a temporary suspension in the political narrative which was essentially hostile to migration. And it caused a lot of people in a lot of countries to step back and to sort of recognize that more had to be done to deal with the human tragedy. But I think it was only temporary. But occasionally, it's necessary just to wake the audience up, to create a space where there will be a shocked response and so on. And this image did just that. It created a backwash from readers, but it opened up the discussion. It made it a much more relevant, immediate and important part of the public debate.